What if I told you that the smartest, most technologically advanced move you can make this year is, well, it's to buy a smartphone that the industry pretty much already considers obsolete?
I mean, it sounds totally counterintuitive, right? Especially in consumer tech, where we are conditioned to constantly chase the horizon. We always want the shiny new thing.
Right, exactly.
But sometimes actually stepping off that upgrade treadmill is where the real advantage is.
Which brings us to the core mission of our deep dive today for you guys. So it is August 2026. Roughly 18 months ago, the Samsung Galaxy S25 series hit the market.
Hard to believe it's been that long, honestly.
I know, right? And right now, you're navigating this world where the successor, the S26, is already out. And the rumor mill is just spinning completely out of control about the impending S27.
Oh, the rumors are everywhere.
Yeah. Navigating these release cycles is, well, it's a lot like buying a car. Do you want the untested new model year, where you're essentially the beta tester for the manufacturer?
Yeah.
Or do you grab the model where, all the quirks are documented, the performance is proven, and crucially, the prices finally drop back down to earth?
The latter is almost always the sounder investment. But to actually prove that, we have to look past the marketing noise. We need to analyze how the 2025 hardware holds up against what we're doing in 2026.
And we have a massive stack of sources to help us do exactly that. We're looking at launch-era previews from Cashify, some really rigorous 18-month retrospectives from Phone Arena and Refurb UK, plus the hard technical spec breakdowns from Android headlines and Digital Camera World.
Yeah, we've got a lot of ground to cover.
We really do. Our goal is to cut through all the hype and definitively answer if buying this older flagship today actually makes sense. And to do that, before we even touch the internal processors or the AI software, we kind of have to talk about the physical form factor.
Absolutely, because the design heavily dictates your daily utility. I mean, if a device is uncomfortable to hold, you will resent it, regardless of how fast it opens apps.
Exactly. And with the S25 series, Samsung gave us this. It's like a tale of two very distinct physical philosophies.
It really is. The tactile experience is paramount here, and it's something those spec sheets often fail to capture.
It's the difference between a tailored suit and like a military tank. You look at the base S25, and it is an absolute featherweight. We're talking 7.2 millimeters thin and weighing just 162 grams.
It's remarkably light.
Right. It has these perfectly flat sides, and it disappears into your pocket. It's designed for minimal friction in your daily life.
But then you contrast that with the S25 Ultra, which is an entirely different beast altogether. You are dealing with a dense titanium frame and a much, much larger, heavier footprint.
Right, but the trade-off for that bulk is long-term durability that honestly borders on absurd. I was reading the Phone Arena retrospective. They used the Ultra for a year as a daily driver. And they noted that the Gorilla Armor 2 screen remained entirely unscratched.
Without a screen protector.
Without a screen protector.
Oh, wow.
For a whole year. And beyond just the scratch resistance, they call the anti-reflective coating on that glass a literal game changer.
Yeah.
And I want to pause on that because it sounds like marketing jargon, right? But the utility is massive. Have you ever tried to read an email on a beach with a standard glossy screen?
Oh, it's awful. It's nearly impossible because the glass reflects all that ambient light right back into your eyes, just washing out the entire display.
Right. And the typical, brute force solution to that is just cranking the screen brightness to 1,000 nits.
Which absolutely annihilates your battery life.
Exactly. But this anti-reflective coating, it alters the physics of the glass. It scatters the incoming light so it doesn't reflect, meaning the screen appears incredibly bright and readable outdoors without the phone having to pull all that extra battery power just to combat the sun.
What's fascinating here is how that shifts the whole definition of a premium device. For a decade, premium just meant, the phone was made of fragile glass and polished metal that looks stunning in a retail store.
Right, until you drop it once.
Exactly. True premium design is about longevity. It's the ability to pull that phone out of your pocket 18 months later, having never used a bulky case, and the titanium frame and that Gorilla Armor 2 display still look immaculate.
They also finally addressed the ergonomics.
Yeah.
Because the older S24 Ultra had those sharp 90-degree corners.
Oh, those were brutal.
They would literally dig into your palm and destroy the lining of your pockets. The S25 Ultra rounded them off, making this massive device actually manageable to hold. However, I do have to push back on the Ultra's defining physical feature.
S Pen.
Yeah, I seriously question the value of the famous S Pen. Looking through the Phone Arena piece, they mentioned this too. Isn't that stylus mostly just wasted internal space? I mean, most people pull it out once, jot a quick note just to see how it works, and then kind of forget it exists.
It is a really polarizing inclusion. I mean, for digital artists or professionals who need to annotate blueprints or sign documents on the go, it provides an unparalleled level of precision.
Sure, for that niche.
But your critique is entirely valid for the vast majority of users. For them, the S Pen represents a hollow cavity inside the phone. That is physical real estate that engineers could have easily repurposed for a larger battery cell or a more robust thermal cooling chamber.
And thermals are actually the perfect pivot here because all that sleek titanium and Gorilla Glass wouldn't matter at all if the phone just overheated in your hand. Which leads us directly into what might be the single biggest triumph of the S25 series.
The silicon brains inside the operation.
Yes, and how they broke a very, very long curse.
The silicon narrative of the S25 is arguably the most critical factor in its relevance today.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because for years, Samsung had this dual sourcing problem. Buyers in the US got the premium Qualcomm Snapdragon chips, while European buyers were often stuck with Samsung's in-house Exynos chips.
Right.
And those Exynos processors had notorious thermal throttling issues.
We should probably define thermal throttling for the listener real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
When a processor works hard, it generates heat. If the phone cannot dissipate that heat fast enough, the internal temperature spikes. So to prevent the silicon from physically melting,
Which would be bad.
very bad.
Yeah.
To prevent that, the phone software intentionally throttles or slows down the processor's speed. So your device suddenly feels sluggish, animations stutter, and your battery just plummets.
But for the S25 series, Samsung completely abandoned the Exynos experiment. They globally shipped the Snapdragon 8 Elite. And Refurbed UK noted in their testing that even under sustained heavy load, the phone stays incredibly disciplined. It remains below 42 degrees Celsius.
Which is impressive. And this comes down to the architecture. The Snapdragon 8 Elite is a 3-nanometer chip.
Okay, explain the nanometer thing because that gets thrown around a lot.
That 3-nanometer measurement is the key to the entire thermal success. When we talk about nanometers in this context, we are referring to the microscopic distance between the billions of transistors on the chip. By shrinking that distance down to 3 nanometers, the electrons literally don't have to travel as far to complete a calculation.
So a shorter commute for the electrons means less power is required to move them.
Precisely. And less power drawn from the battery means less ambient heat generated as a byproduct. So the device runs faster, it uses less battery, and it stays physically cooler to the touch.
That makes perfect sense.
I should also clarify a minor discrepancy found in one of our sources. A tech blog called Rec Tech World referred to this processor as the Snapdragon 8 Gen 4, based on some early pre-launch rumors.
Oh, right, I saw that.
Yeah, but official spec sheets from Qualcomm and Samsung confirm it is definitively branded as the Snapdragon 8 Elite.
Got it. Regardless of the naming convention, they paired that chip with 12 gigabytes of RAM across both models. Now, if the processors are the worker getting things done, the RAM is the workbench.
That's a good way to look at it.
A 12-gigabyte workbench means you can have like 50 complex blueprints laid out all at once without having to constantly put things away. Dropping that massive workbench in the Snapdragon 8 Elite into the tiny 7.2mm S25 base model that is a staggering amount of power for such a small physical footprint.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, providing a workbench that massive isn't just about ensuring smooth multitasking today. It's really a long-term insurance policy. Samsung made a massive commitment with this series. 7 years of guaranteed operating system updates.
7 years.
Yeah, that means this specific hardware will theoretically be running Android 22.
Android 22. It sounds like a sci-fi operating system.
It does. And software naturally suffers from code bloat over time. Operating systems become heavier, they demand more background resources. To ensure a device doesn't buckle under the weight of software that won't even be written for another 5 years, manufacturers have to drastically over-engineer the hardware at launch.
So that 12 gigabytes of RAM is what guarantees the phone will still feel snappy in 2030.
Exactly.
That makes the early investment make a lot more sense.
So with all that massive processing runway established, what is the phone actually doing with it right now in 2026? Because the initial marketing was heavily focused on flashy AI tools.
Right, the AI boom.
But digging into the sources, the real software magic seems to be hiding in the day-to-day utilities.
The S25 series runs on One UI 8, which is built on Android 16. It's a highly refined interface, largely because Samsung natively integrated their Good Lock customization suite.
That stood out to me as a huge quality of life improvement because normally if you want to heavily customize, say, the grid size or animations or gesture controls of an Android phone, you have to download a third-party launcher, right, like Nova Launcher or something.
Yeah, but those apps run as an overlay. They sit on top of the native operating system, which inherently creates overhead. It drains the battery faster and causes these annoying microstutters when you swipe around. By baking it natively into One UI 8, you get the deep customization without the performance penalty.
Refurbed UK also highlighted some brilliant power user settings that take advantage of this native integration. My personal favorite is a deep-level toggle that allows you to cap the CPU performance at 70%.
See, that initially sounds crazy to me. You buy this top-tier Snapdragon 8 Elite, and then you intentionally kneecap its performance by 30%.
It sounds absurd until you consider the architecture of the processor. The chip is divided into performance cores for the heavy lifting, like 3D gaming, and efficiency cores for basic tasks.
Okay.
On a quiet Sunday when you're just, reading articles or sending text messages, you don't need the performance cores firing at all. Capping the CPU at 70% forces the phone to rely entirely on the efficiency cores.
Which saves battery.
It massively extends your battery life. And because the baseline speed of this chip is so high to begin with, the human eye literally cannot perceive the drop in speed during normal tasks.
So you get all the battery benefits of a budget phone without ever feeling like you're actually using one.
Precisely.
Refurb UK also pointed out a feature where you can pin an image or a screenshot to the edge of the screen mid-workflow. Like if you're looking at a recipe or a confirmation number you need to type into a web browser, you just select it, pin it, and it hovers on the side of your screen.
That is so useful.
You don't have to endlessly swipe back and forth between apps holding numbers in your short-term memory. It just removes so much digital friction.
Then there is Samsung DeX, their desktop environment. Phone Arena shared a rather extreme anecdote about a sailor who completely ditched his traditional laptop.
I love this story.
Yeah, he just plugs his S25 into a monitor on his ship, and the phone powers a full multi-window desktop interface. This touches on the broader concept of edge computing.
Where the phone itself is a computer, rather than just like a portal to cloud services.
Exactly. The processing happens entirely locally, on the edge of the network, which is vital when you're in the middle of the ocean without a stable Wi-Fi connection.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. I will push back on the AI features Samsung hyped up. They heavily marketed live call translation and a built-in voice recorder that auto-transcribes meetings. But are those native tools actually superior to just downloading a dedicated third-party app from a specialized AI company?
They are, and again, it comes down to workflow friction and cost. The sources outline this ultimate productivity pipeline you can achieve natively on this device.
Yeah.
Imagine you sit in a complex meeting. You record it on the native Samsung app.
Okay.
Because of the processor, it instantly and accurately transcribes the audio locally without sending your confidential corporate data to an external server. You copy that text, paste it right into Google Gemini, which is deeply integrated into the OS, and prompt it for an executive summary with action items.
Oh, wow.
You have turned an hour-long meeting into a concise brief in under 2 minutes.
And crucially, you didn't have to pay a $20 monthly subscription fee to a third-party transcription service to do it. It's all baked in.
Exactly.
So the processor handles business, edge computing, and AI tasks flawlessly. But what happens when you step out of the spreadsheet and try to capture a memory? Because the approach Samsung took to the camera hardware, especially on the base model, is highly controversial.
Yes, the camera systems are where we see a severe divergence between the base S25 and the Ultra.
That is putting it mildly.
Yeah.
The base S25 is utilizing the exact same camera sensors as the S22, the S23, and the S24. We are talking about a 3-year-old 50-megapixel main sensor, a 10-megapixel 3x telephoto, and a 12-megapixel ultra-wide.
It's definitely older tech.
And the sources noted that the 3x telephoto sensor is so physically small that in low-light situations, the phone realizes it can't gather enough light, gives up on the telephoto entirely, and just digitally crops into the main sensor instead.
Meanwhile, the S25 Ultra is flexing a completely different tier of hardware. It boasts a massive 200-megapixel main sensor, a new high-resolution 50-megapixel ultra-wide, and a 50-megapixel 5x periscope lens.
But even with the recycled hardware on the base model, the software processing steps in to elevate the final image. A great example is how the S25 lets you add background blur, that professional portrait mode effect, to a standard photo after you've already taken it.
Which is incredibly handy.
Rivals like Vivo couldn't do that at the time. They also introduced the audio eraser for video, which uses AI to map out the audio track and magically strip out intrusive wind noise or, like, a loud siren from a video clip.
We also need to highlight the video capabilities outlined by Digital Camera World, specifically the inclusion of 10-bit analog video at 4K resolution and 30 frames per second.
Phone Arena brought this up too, and it is a massive differentiator. Apple's ProRes video on the iPhone is technically brilliant, capturing uncompressed data like a fire hose. But because it captures everything, it gobbles up around 6 gigabytes of storage space per minute of footage.
It's completely unmanageable.
A 10-minute family video would fill your entire hard drive. It's unusable for a normal consumer.
Which is why Samsung's implementation of log video is so smart. Log stands for logarithmic curve. Instead of capturing uncompressed raw data, it uses a mathematical curve to compress the file while preserving the dynamic range, meaning the details in the deepest shadows and the brightest highlights.
Right, so it looks super flat at first.
Exactly. It results in a flat, gray-looking video that you can easily color grade later, but the genius is that it only takes up 600 to 800 megabytes per minute.
It makes professional-grade color grading accessible without requiring external terabyte hard drives. But I have to challenge this whole setup. If the base S25 relies on camera sensors designed 4 years ago, why should a consumer in 2026 even consider it? Especially when Chinese brands like Xiaomi are currently cramming massive 1-inch physical sensors into their phones to capture light naturally.
This raises an important question about the current trajectory of mobile photography. The smartphone industry has, for the most part, hit a physical hardware plateau. Well, you can only make a glass lens and a light sensor so large before the phone becomes too top-heavy or thick to comfortably hold. Because of this physical limitation, the real innovation isn't happening in the glass anymore. It's happening in the per-visual engine.
The computational photography side.
Exactly. It's no longer just about the lens catching the light. It's about what the Snapdragon processor does with that digital data the millisecond after the light hits the sensor. Samsung's algorithms utilize techniques like semantic segmentation.
What's that?
When you take a photo, the AI instantly recognizes, okay, this is a human face, this is a blue sky, and this is green grass. It then applies entirely different exposure and color correction rules to each of those elements simultaneously before saving the final JPEG.
So the software brain is basically artificially upgrading the aging hardware eyes.
Yes. The algorithms are squeezing every conceivable drop of performance out of those older sensors, allowing them to punch far above their weight class.
But running all of that intense computational photography, powering local AI transcriptions, and driving a desktop environment via DeX that requires serious energy. Which brings us to the battery life, the overall value proposition, and how this specific phone sits in the bizarre 2026 market landscape.
The battery specifications are solid, though they don't necessarily break industry records. The featherweight base S25 houses a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, which in lab tests delivered roughly 13 hours of active continuous use.
Not bad for how thin it is.
True. The massive Ultra model packs a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, netting around 6 hours of heavy, intense screen time like 3D gaming or video editing.
The charging speeds are acceptable, but not groundbreaking. You get 45-watt fast charging on the Ultra, which will get you from 0 to 68% in about 30 minutes. The base model is capped at 25 watts. And interestingly, neither phone adopted the new Key 2 magnetic charging standard that we saw Google implement on the Pixel 10.
Yeah, that was a missed opportunity.
If you want that satisfying snap-on magnetic charging experience on the S25, you are forced to buy a third-party magnetic case.
Those are minor compromises, though, when you consider where the S25 series truly shines in 2026, which is the sheer value proposition.
Because you aren't paying that initial early adopter tax anymore. When the Ultra launched 18 months ago, the 512-gigabyte model was well over $12,299. But looking at recent secondary market data, that exact same model dropped to around $850 during recent holiday sales.
That's a huge drop.
You're securing a titanium-clad 200-megapixel Snapdragon-powered supercomputer for practically half its original asking price.
And Refurb UK pointed out a wild twist in the global market narrative that makes the older S25 even more valuable today.
Oh, this is the craziest part.
The newer Galaxy S26, the device that officially replaced the phone we are discussing, actually reverted to using Samsung's Exynos chips in many global markets to save on manufacturing costs.
So what does this all mean? It means if you buy the older S25 right now, you are essentially finding a loophole in the tech matrix. You're paying significantly less money for a year-and-a-half-old device that actually features a cooler-running, superior processor than the brand-new phone that replaced it.
Precisely. When you combine the incredibly efficient 3-nanometer Snapdragon chip with the power user trick we discussed earlier, capping the CPU at 70%, the battery longevity and thermal performance you extract from a discounted S25 is genuinely unmatched by its own successor.
It is a phenomenal anomaly.
Yeah.
To wrap this all up, navigating the smartphone market usually involves accepting frustrating compromises. But the Galaxy S25 series represents a rare disruption to the normal cycle. Whether you need the titanium armor and heavy productivity tools of the Ultra, or the friction-free featherweight design of the base model, it is objectively a smarter, more thermally efficient purchase than the current generation replacements.
It really is the reliable, fully documented older car that just happens to have a vastly superior engine under the hood than the brand new model sitting on the showroom floor.
Exactly.
It's a striking testament to the fact that newer hardware is not intrinsically better. And if we look at the recycled camera sensors in the base S25 and this undeniable reality of a hardware plateau, it leaves us with an interesting concept to ponder.
I'm listening.
If smartphone hardware has truly stopped making massive leaps forward, and companies are now guaranteeing software updates for 7 years, are we approaching a future where you don't actually buy a new phone every few years?
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Right. Will we soon just hold on to our aging glass slabs indefinitely and instead pay a monthly subscription to unlock new AI capabilities and computational photography upgrades hidden within the cloud?
That is a terrifying but very realistic thought, something to definitely mull over next time you feel the urge to upgrade. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring the sources, keep questioning the hype, and we will catch you next time.